This is But the Years Are Short, the podcast where mamas who are therapists share real advice for real families. I'm Meagan.
And I'm Katie, and we want to be your front porch community where you can laugh and learn with us about the beautiful, messy, overwhelming, hilarious work of raising kids.
Because the days are long,
but the years are short. Okay, so Meagan, I'm looking at the summer, and
God,
because
coming
it's
so fast.
Oh my gosh, I know it is. So I'm looking at okay, so it's March, and so summer starts in I'm not going to count the months because it feels like it's not that many. It's like 3. And
Yeah.
so because we are parents, it's like summer is impending. And
It does
it's like,
feel
what
that
do
way.
because it's like, what do you do with your kids all summer? And because my kids have 2 houses and 2 parents, then we coordinate, right? Okay, so
Yes.
so the texting and phone calls start now about okay, so when are you planning to take the kids to Michigan, and how long do you want them to be there, and what holiday do you want that to fall on? And then, okay, great. So then I'll take them after that. And if you want to fly them, or if you want to book the tickets, then I'll pay you for half of the price. And then I'll pick them up from this airport, and then I'll take them to Virginia and DC. And so
That sounds all very exciting
I know.
for your
And because,
kids.
yes, and I honestly, for us too, well, for me, and it takes a lot of forward planning, which is not a skill set that comes naturally to me.
Yeah, lots of focused
So
attention.
I know. And so when I'm not working, I prefer to be doing things that are fun, and planning vacations is not something that I think is fun because it means I have to really focus.
You would think a lot.
Yes, I have to think a
Yeah.
lot, and okay, so how long is it going to take me to drive to DC, because I'm going to want to have my car while we're in Virginia for a week and a half, maybe, I don't know. But there's just a lot happening. So I'm trying to plan the summer, and then book their camps around all of that, and all of this is stupid expensive, like
Yes, I agree.
with the camps and all that.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening
Yeah. And it's
in
just
my
I get annoyed that it has to start the end of February for booking camps.
I
So, I
know.
don't have to do the 2 home thing, but we have to do the camp thing, and I'm like, "I'm not even close ready to think about this." We still have spring break in the way, but if we don't think about it, we will not get into the camps.
I know. I
It's
know.
ridiculous.
And then we have not just the girls, but we also have a dog that we sort of share. It's okay, so if you get back on the 4th of July and then I leave on the 8th, then I can have the dog. I'll watch the dog until you get back, and then you can have the dog while I'm gone. It's it's a whole thing. It's a
Yeah, it's a
whole
lot.
coordinating thing. So here's why I tell that sort of situation that we're in, because I feel super, super thankful that my girl's dad and I are in such a good spot for being able to navigate all of that. And everything's not a fight, right?
Yeah.
We're able to get through coordinating the summers. And it's not well, you get these days and only these days, and I get these days and only these days. It's not tooth and nail, possessiveness about it. It's very yeah, whatever
Yeah.
you want to do is cool. And then if you're cool with this, then here's what I'd like to do. And everybody's good,
Yeah, and I
which is
think that story, Katie, kind of highlights what we're gonna be doing this next month and talking about 2 homes and all of the divorce stuff.
yes. And from a really,
Yeah.
this can be such a heavy topic,
Yeah.
but our game plan, I think, and you and I haven't really talked about this much, but my hope is
Mhm.
that we can give some optimism around this, because it can really be very productive and peaceful and thoughtful and kind. And I think we want to give some hope to people
Yes,
that it can be done
100%.
really well and without creating a bunch of harm for everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. And I would agree. That is my heart in this too, that this is, we can normalize some of the things. We can give some really good tools for families, and we can give lots of hope around this time in a lot of families' lives. And so today we're going to actually start with like, how do we even start with telling our kiddos if our family is starting that restructuring process? Right? And so we wanna
100%.
talk
Yep.
about today we're gonna kinda hit on, like, when do we tell them? What do we say? And all the little ins and outs of that. And then what are some of the things we should be expecting or we can expect through this process?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So, and for people who don't know this about me and Megan, like this is the water that we swim in. Like this is what we do all day, every day. Like I
Yes.
walk parents through how to have this conversation with their kids like twice a week. So
Mhm.
this is super familiar territory. And there is absolutely a way to do this well. There's a way to do
Alright.
this well.
So let's start with that, Katie. Like, if we're thinking big goals, because you do this is like the thing, this is your jam. What do you think is the thing that our kids need to know through these conversations?
Okay. So I think real quick, let's do a flyover of like things
Hmm.
that we need. So things to cover are like you need to be thoughtful about when to tell them, where to tell them, what to say, and then how to support them afterwards. Right. So like those are all pieces that it's not just like a one and done. It's not like a, oh, hey, by the way, it's not in the car. It's
Yeah.
not like, so it's a planned conversation. And in terms of what you just asked me, like, what do our kids need to know? They need to know from you, their parent, that we are all going to be okay. We're all going to be okay, right? There's lots of changes coming, and that's all right. We're all going to be okay. And we communicate this through like body language, tone of voice, volume,
Mhm.
how we do the setup, like all of those pieces. And we're going to go through all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's a great piece, right? We do want to communicate. We're all going to be okay. Can you talk to us? Tell me, like, when you tell parents, like, why is that the core message that our kids need?
Okay. Because foundationally, the overarching message that you're giving them is everything about their life is about to change. Like,
Yeah.
so much about their life is about to change. And that feels very destabilizing. And so, if what you can give them alongside of that is, and we are all going to be okay, and you can communicate that you really believe that, they will take, they will be able to borrow some of your feelings of security to get them through that
Yes.
time.
Yeah, and I love that piece, right? Of borrowing that security because our kiddos, like, so as like a child therapist, I often get the kids after they've had these conversations, right? And I think that the piece of all of our kids, they still need us in lots of ways, right? And so if we as parents, as we're moving this conversation, we can hold that, like, we're going to be okay. Our kids do borrow that, right? They do hold on to that. I think a lot of times the questions that are running through kids' minds, right? Of like, when this destabilization happens is like, am I safe? Is this my fault? What will
Right.
happen to me? Will both parents love me? And so I do think like we as parents being aware of that as we move through this can be really helpful. What else would you add to this piece, Katie?
I think that kids, and this is the thing that we'll touch on,
Hmm.
when big things happen, we've said before in episodes before that kids are incredibly egocentric. So this means everything is, and it's just a developmental stage. Everything that happens in the world is either about them or because of them. And it's just where their brains are developmentally. And so we have to give them alternate information to make sense of what is happening. Otherwise, the story that they tell themselves is not only wrong, but it's accidentally long term kind of harmful. Right. And so, if we can give them good information that is like secure and stabilizing, that will go miles in the long term for them.
All right. So when we started this conversation, you talked a lot about like, we're going to be super intentional about like when we do it, how we do it, what are the words. So, like, let's just start with like when. How do you help families set up for when do we talk to our kids that this is going to be happening?
Okay. So the when, so if you, okay, so let's say that you and your spouse have decided that you can, it's a really, really sad decision that you've had to make. You've put a ton of thought into it, and you both now know, you're both aware, regardless of who initiated this, you're both now aware that the marriage is not going to continue. And then you figure out that, well, the kids are going to have to be made aware at some point. So here's what I would say. I would say that they do not need to be brought into the situation until you are 3 to, like, I'd say like 2 to 4 weeks from someone moving out.
Okay, so
Okay.
tell us more about that. Why is that kind of your rule?
Because if you are 3 months from moving out, everyone is then going to live in this limbo for a really long time, and that's confusing. And so
Mhm.
while it's confusing for you and you're having to toe that line, it is not your kid's job to be in it with you. It is your job to carry that discomfort. It's not your kid's job to carry it. And so yeah, what?
Oh, so I was gonna say, so like it's just a way that we protect our kids, right? We just say
Yes.
like we've said before, like this is a grown up thing. And so
Mhm.
holding that information to be a grown up thing for appropriately until like you said, we're ready, we have a better plan of what the shift is gonna be. It really does protect our kids.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And they may know, our kids are pretty observant, and so a lot of the time they know something is weird, something strange is happening. Like you
Mhm.
may be sleeping on the couch, you know, somebody may be coming home later than normal. And that's all okay. You know, a lot of the time kids don't ask questions, and sometimes they do. They might say, you know, "Mommy, why are you sleeping on the couch? Why are you sleeping in the guest room? How come daddy's gone more? How come he's working late more often?" And I think as much as you can come up with, you know, things that make sense in your household to get you to that point that you have this conversation. Because again, you know, all of you, grown-ups and parents, I mean, grown-ups and kids don't need to be living in this weird limbo for 6 months. You and your partner, you carry that piece, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So then let's say we've gotten to the 3 to 4 week mark or 2 to 3 weeks, right? That's fine too. I think the younger the kid, the shorter the amount of time that needs to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I would recommend is that you choose a day that there's not a ton going on. So usually this is a Saturday or a Sunday that everyone is in the same place. Okay. So we're all at home.
Mhm.
This is not a conversation that one parent delivers, if at all possible. Okay, so
Yeah.
both of you are present with all of your kids. And so you may say something like, and you're in a communal space in the home. So it's not in your bedroom, it's not in any of the kids' bedrooms, it's in a communal space. So usually a living room is good because you can be like sitting close. They can come get snuggles if they want. Around a kitchen table, if the kids are older, can be just fine. And so it's also really important that this happen before the move, right? So we do
Mhm.
not want our kids to all of a sudden, like they get home and someone has moved out. That's really confusing and scary. So we need to
Yes.
give them time to adjust. It also needs to be a really calm conversation that is planned and thought about ahead of time. So it's not something that we do when you're upset, because when we're upset, we do not choose words well. And that's a human condition. That's everyone.
Yeah. So I think like being super intentional about the when, I'm going to kind of summarize is like we want to choose a time where everyone can be there, both parents,
Mhm.
all kiddos. We want to choose a time that is not super busy, like not running between kid number one soccer game and kid number two's football game. Like we
Mhm.
want to create space for our kids in this. And then we also want to make sure that we are being intentional about our language around it for our kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So the like last piece of this that I think I didn't say explicitly is make sure you have a number of unstructured hours afterwards,
Yeah.
because you don't know what they're going to need. Like if they're going to want to watch a movie with you, if they're going to need to be in their rooms alone, if they're going to want to sit on your lap and cry. So you want to be able to be responsive. Some kids have, you know, the response has been like, "Yeah, I sort of saw that coming. Can we go to the park?" You
Yeah.
know, and they do their processing later, and some kids are devastated and need to be held for an hour. And so you just need to be available for whatever that looks like. And if we have to leave for soccer in 20 minutes, it doesn't allow us that space.
Yeah, in that rush. Yeah, and okay, yeah, we'll talk more kind of like kids' reactions as we talk about move on to the next piece. So okay, so now we kind of talked about like how do we set it up? And now the next piece is like what do our kids need to hear? What are the must hears when we talk about this for our kids through this process?
Okay, so we've also said, like kids learn things and understand things through story, right? And
Mhm.
so something that's really important that I think a lot of people don't understand about children is that they do not have the cognitive structure yet to understand that there can be two perspectives of one reality. Okay. So,
Yeah.
like, let's say that mom feels that, dad has, she would love to stay married, but dad is leaving, and all she wanted was more attention and more affection and more love. And she's been begging and pleading, and he's leaving her and the children, and she's just devastated, right? And so that's her
Feels
perspective.
really big and hard.
Feels really big and hard and
Yeah.
scary. And then dad's perspective is he has been trying to understand how to be an adequate husband for a long time. It's been really hard for him to juggle all of the responsibilities of working, of being a dad, of being a husband. He feels like mom maybe drinks too much. Maybe he feels like mom is too over involved with her extended family. And these are things they've talked about, but mom can't hear them, right? So, and I am 100% making this up in this very moment. These are not real people. But I think what I'm saying is that could be two perspectives of one story,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Now, here's the problem. If the children in that family, whether they are 10 or 15, if the children in that family hear those two different stories, they can't yet hold that there could be one reality with two different perceptions.
Yeah. Like their brains just aren't wired that way yet. They haven't developed that big enough. And so they're very black and white thinking. And so that does feel
Mhm.
scary when they're told all of those pieces.
Yes. And then here's what happens they have to believe that one of those stories is true and the other one is a lie. So the problem that we run into is if they get two different stories from you, they have to decide which one of you is lying to them. And we do not want to put them in that position.
Yeah. And I think because that's how their brains work, right? Like and I want us to like take a step back and 100% just reinforce this idea of like even us y'all like if my best friend comes and tells me a story about how her partner did her wrong, I may know her partner and I may really love her partner. However, I'm going to believe her story first, right? And my identity is not dependent on those two people.
Exactly. Your
And so
survival.
exactly, my survival, my, identity, and so I think, like, yes, there are obviously reasons for every family that they when they choose divorce, and it is not never an easy choice, and the way we protect our kids is we only share the one story.
Yes. Yes. So then the question becomes like, well, what is the story?
What is the story, Katie?
And how do we arrive on a story that makes
Yeah.
sense that we both can agree to?
We can yes, and I both agree to, I think is can be important and challenging, right? So I think walk us through, Katie, like what does that mean when we say we both parties agree to the story of why we're getting divorced?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually like that sounds really hard, but it's actually pretty simple because the words are really simple.
Yeah.
Because your kids don't need to know how abandoned you feel. They do not need to know how exhausted you have felt in your marriage and how lonely you have felt in your marriage. It's not, unless they are 25, they could probably begin to hold some of those pieces and individuate from them, like, and feel separate enough from them.
Well, and I'll even say even though at 25, that should not be the first story they hear about your divorce. Like they
That's
should hear
fair.
something else for a while and then they can hold that.
Love that. It's one of the things I appreciate about you so much is the like, yeah, Katie, but. right? So, okay, so here's what we do, right? So, in coaching families into, does this message work for you?
Mhm.
And it almost always does, or some version of this. Okay. If at all possible, your story, if we can have it start with we have made a really difficult decision. Okay. So you're talking to your kids at this point. So you have called them into the room. You've said, "Hey guys, can you come in here? We have something we need to talk to you about." You're both talking, you're taking turns talking. Okay. You tell them, "We have made a really difficult decision. We have decided to get divorced." If your kids are younger, you're going to need to say a couple follow up statements that are clarifying.
Mhm.
And they are things like, "This means we are no longer going to be married to each other. We are not going to be husband and wife anymore." Okay. So for people who are contemplating getting divorced or who are trying to figure out how to talk to their kids, these feel like a punch in the gut
Yeah.
because thinking about talking to your kids about this, honest to goodness, is the hardest part of this whole thing, the whole process. So, this is a conversation I have had with my kids. It's the hardest thing I've done in my whole life. It is gut wrenching. It's terrifying. There's a real level, like, I'm a therapist, I'm a parenting specialist, and there's real fear that you are going to harm them. What I can promise you is that this conversation, if you do it well, will not harm them. It will not harm them.
And and I will say, like, as a kids therapist, if you can do this conversation well, and by well, we don't mean perfectly, right? Like, we don't mean like you are actors on a stage. If you can do it setting across time, being super intentional with your words, it actually sets your kids up with a really good base for y'all
Mhm.
to move forward with. Because it is
Yep.
going to be a challenging season. We're not saying that it's not at all, but like this can give you common language and a really good base to start this season with for your children.
100%. Yeah. Because here's the other piece. What we're doing here is setting them up to understand that you are still working together, right? If this is a we message, we have decided, you are maintaining the message that we, the two of us, are functioning together. We are not going to be married, but we are functioning together as your parents, right? So you're laying groundwork in this conversation.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, as someone who works with a lot of kiddos in divorce, the thing that I see is when we talk about families that are doing kids that are more grounded in it versus kids that are having a harder time, the kids that are more grounded in it are have the message both in this time and continually that we are still one family but have two homes, right? And so I think like if we can start with that message from this point and move forward, that is going to provide your kids with such firm foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to some like frequently asked questions
Yeah.
at the end because I can hear, I've had this conversation like hundreds of times with people and I can hear the what ifs coming up. And so we'll get there. Here's one that I'll throw out real quick. What if one of my kids gets up and leaves the room? Here's what I will say. I will say, maybe give them a second, stop talking. Like, don't deliver the rest of the message to your other kids. Stop talking and go and get them. If they don't come back with you, bring the rest of your family to where they are because this is not a conversation that they can avoid. This is real and we have to deliver the information. Okay? And it's hard, but we can do it. We can do hard things. Okay. After you have that first initial delivery of the information, we have decided to get divorced. We have decided we are no longer going to be married. There are some must tell messages. There are 7 of them. We will put them in the show notes for you. But here are the must tell messages that clarify some internal messaging that begins for most kids. Right. So these are you ready? Number 1, we will always be a family, just a different kind of family. Okay, and I'll say this one, I don't want us to get lost in what number we're on. This is number 2. I'll say this one is really hard for some people, particularly if one person is initiating the divorce and the other person really does not want to get divorced. So we're going to piece this one out. So, number two is we believe that this is for the best. We know it doesn't feel that way now, but we will all be okay. If one parent is like, I do not believe this is for the best and I will not say that, that's fine. That's fine. So, what we're going to shift to is drop that first line and we're just going to say, we know it doesn't feel this way now, but we will all be okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So we can shift that piece. Number three is we will always love you and nothing can change that. Number four is we will always be your parents. Mom will always be your mom and dad will always be your dad.
Mhm.
Okay. Number five is this is not your fault. Number six is this is a grown up decision between a husband and a wife. This is not going to change and it is final. Okay. And the last one is some things are going to change moving forward. Lots of things are going to stay the same. A big thing that's going to change is that you'll have two homes.
If we're thinking of these statements that are musts, these are all about your kids, right? This is all about your kid and y'all's relationship with them in your family. This is not about the marriage. And I just want to reiterate that because I
Right.
do think because our kids are so egocentric, right? It is all about them. It gets to be about them in these conversations. And so they, again, to reiterate, like they don't need all the details of why the family is restructuring. They need to understand that it is and that there is a plan for it because that brings them security.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Yes. That's so important. I'm glad you said that. So the why we tell them we will always love you and nothing can change that. Megan, why do we tell them that part?
Okay, so I think that's really helpful and important. Kids, because they are egocentric, right? So it's like, okay, here's what their brains do. Everything's about them. So if dad stopped loving mom and mom stopped loving dad, does that mean they're going to stop loving me? Right. And that is
Exactly.
all of our kids' biggest fears, right? We all want to be loved. We all want to be lovable. And so reiterating that in this statement to begin with is going to be important. I think the other thing that I will say is y'all, these statements you're going to have to say a million times to your kids in lots of different ways because they're still going to have lots of questions. But yeah, that is why we will always love you is so important.
Yep. Yeah. I think that the next one, right? The we will always be your parents. Mom is always going to be your mom. Dad is always going to be your dad. That one comes up a lot when people start dating, right? So, like, if parents are like either caught dating, and by that I mean like somebody's picture and like text from whoever comes up in the car on the
Mhm.
screen, or your kids are seeing you text somebody and they're like, who are you talking to? It's like teens and preteens, right? That are like, they kind of catch on to things like that sooner. And then, the conversations come up and they're like, that would be really weird if you get remarried. I don't want to think
Mhm.
about that. Then that's a really good prompt for, hey, you need to remember that your dad will always be your dad. Your mom will always be your mom. Nothing's going to change that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll also say, like, I feel like every Disney movie has this evil stepmother, right? And so kids will, or like their neighbor down the street, right? And so they'll think those things and ask those things. So I
Mhm.
do think reiterating that in different ways is really helpful just from the get go.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Okay, then this is a grown-up decision between a husband and wife. It's not going to change and it's final. That one's tough because kids always are going to hold out hope that you're going to get back together for a long time. For a long time. And so going ahead and heading that off kind of at the pass, they're still gonna hope. But I think there's a reason that we say it at the beginning, and then it's important that you land that plane, right? This is a grown-up decision. This had nothing to do with you guys. We know this is hard, and there's nothing that you could do that would have changed this.
Yeah.
The line about some things are going to change moving forward, but lots of things are going to stay the same. So I would say if your kids are in a place where they can hear you still, they're not like, let them get calm enough to say things like, your school's going to stay the same.
Hmm.
We're still going to have all the same pets. Where you hang your backpack up after school is not going to change. You are going to have two homes.
Yeah.
And usually pretty quickly, within a matter of minutes, like seconds or minutes, they start saying, "Where's the other one? Who's going to live there? Can we
Mhm.
go see it?" Very quickly.
Yeah, and so I think that's another point of, like, why you say 2 to 3 weeks, right? When we have a plan.
Hmm.
Is because kids are gonna wanna know some of those things.
Very fast, because they want to know what life is about to look like. And so if we tell them 6 months out and they don't have anything to point to and say, "Oh, that's what it's going to look like," it's very confusing
Yeah.
and can create anxiety.
So the things that I want us to hear that we're not saying in this, right? We are not giving a lot of adult details. We are not blaming either one of the parents. We are not talking about legal or financial issues. And we are not emotionally venting through this conversation. Why do you think those things are so important, Katie? That we're avoiding those things.
Because they're too big. They're too
Yeah.
big. Our kids are not built yet for those things. There's this conversation and really everything about this whole transition for them has to be about you containing this transition into just the pieces they can handle, right? So
Hmm.
there's a reason if you're moving across the country, they're not in charge of the budget of the move. They're not in charge of how hard that is for you or finding you a new job or hooking up the electrical, right? It is no different in a divorce process. Your job with your kids, your responsibility is to contain those big pieces and allow this big shift for them to only be as big as it has to be because it's
Yes.
already going to be emotionally humongous and very sad and very confusing and create a ton of anxiety. And all you have to do for them is contain. And I keep saying this word contain because it's kind of a therapy word, but what I'm meaning is if your presence with them can be primarily calm so that they can borrow your calm. So I have people ask me, like, but what if I cry? What if I cry when I have this conversation with my kids? And I'm like, cry. You can be sad. This is sad.
This is
This is
sad.
sad. This is hard. It's overwhelming. If you
Hmm.
are a puddle in the floor and you cannot speak and you're like heaving, that's not terribly helpful. Like, let's don't do
A little
that.
too much.
That's too much because then your kids are like, what is that? They're going to panic,
Hmm.
right? And feel like they have to make you calm. And that's not their job. But it is okay for your kids to see you be sad. And then you may say something like, this is really sad, because then they're learning how to express emotion. But it is primarily our job to let them have space to do all of that. What do you think?
Yeah.
Is this one of those places that you'd be like, well, Katie, I don't know about that?
No, I think that this is right. This is a big thing. Like this is giant, and Katie and I are being very like practical and solution focused and giving lots of things because we want this to be super helpful. But we also know like this is a giant choice for families, right? Every parent like this is a heavy thing that they're stepping into, and so it's that balance of I think when we can hold that line of "I've got you and I'm human," it's really important for our kids, and these are one of the big giant things that yeah, if you are tearful and this is a hard conversation, yes, it is a very hard conversation. That can give your kids permission to have their own feelings through it without, like, losing ourselves in it, because then it becomes our kid's job they feel like it's our job to fix it, and we don't want that.
So I am going to say something, and I don't know if it's oversharing, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it is maybe helpful. I said earlier, this is the conversation I've had with my kids. It was prepared for, and there were pieces of it that their dad and I were not on the same page about. And that happens. But even when we figured out how to do it and we got mostly on the same page, my body was like revolting against me, right? Like I couldn't keep food down and my hair was falling out before I had this conversation. And I was randomly crying and I was calling Megan all the time and I was in her office all the time. And then before the conversation, I told her we were going to do it. And, she's texting me really sweet, encouraging things. I just didn't know if I was going to be able to make it through this. And I do this for a living. I do this for a living. And so when
Yeah.
we say we know it's hard, I mean, that's like a 5 or 6 word sentence, but it's gut wrenching. It is the hardest thing you will ever do, and you will survive it. And your kids will survive it.
Yeah.
You will all remember it forever. And that's why it's important to be planful.
Yes. Yes. You will.
I think a thing that we didn't cover is like in picking a date, it's really important to not choose a date that's like right up against somebody's birthday
Or any holiday,
or
major
holiday.
holidays.
Yeah. Why, Megan?
Okay, so, like, if everyone's already celebrating, like, if it's a national holiday, right, or it's a birthday, like, it's something that our culture already points to, it kinda stinks if everyone's looking forward to, like, Valentine's Day, and then Valentine's Day comes up, and that's the day that you choose, well, then your kids are always gonna remember Valentine's Day as the day that their parents told them they were getting a divorce, and so that's just a lot for your kids to carry, and so I think being really intentional about finding that time to do it is one of the ways you can love your kids really, really well in this.
Oh, that's good. I love how you said that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So avoid those major holidays that come up every year because we don't need a reminder every year. Right. Yeah. So a very random Saturday that is not also President's Day or Christmas or, that's important.
Yeah.
That's really important. So
And, like, we realize we're giving lots of things, y'all, right? We know that. We know this is hard. And so I just like I want to go back to like, how do we be intentional? Because that's one of the ways that we can set our kids up for this. And so, yeah, y'all, we got this. So, we talked about like, all right, we set the ground, Katie. We talked about the things of what we're going to say and what we're not going to say and how we're going to do it. Now, let's talk about how our kids may react. What are some of the things that you either parents are worried about that you hear them ask you, or some of the things that we can be aware of and intentional about being aware of when we go into these conversations?
so I have yeah, so I get the one about like, what if my kids leave the room? So I think we covered that one.
Uh-huh.
We had a family where the kid got up and left the room and climbed a tree. So that was, I mean, but if that's their safe place, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's pretty common for kids to be angry because, this is going to mess up their life in terms of like their day to day, their routine, right?
Yeah.
This is messing up my routine. It's common for them to cry a lot, especially at transitions, later on.
Hmm.
It's pretty normal for them to act like everything's fine
Hmm.
initially, um, even though they're hurting internally because they want to hold it together for you. And I would anticipate this one's really common. Tons of questions, tons of questions. So things like, wait, you already have another house? You already have another apartment? When did you do that? When
Hmm.
did you go and do that? There's furniture there? How did it get there? Can we go see it? This is smaller than our other house. Why isn't it bigger? Where are we gonna park our car? Where am I gonna put my backpack?
How close is it to friend's house? How am I going to get to school? Like all of those
Mhm.
things.
Yeah. Where am I gonna put my stuffies? Where is my makeup gonna go? Where am I
Hmm.
gonna put all of my video games? Right? And it's all very much like, how's this gonna impact me? And that's totally age appropriate. That's a,
Yes.
a thing to keep in mind. They should be asking those things because that's like we said, everything is either about them or because of them.
Hmm. Yeah. And I
So
say like all the way through high school, they should be asking those. I don't think that our 17, 18-year-olds are any different in that.
nope,
Mm-mm.
nope. It's very normal. Yeah. So
So
I think
I
yeah.
Okay. I would say like the thing that I also want us to highlight is y'all, as parents, if you guys are doing kind of like what we said and recommended, of waiting for 2 to 3 weeks before you move out to tell your kids, that means you guys have most likely been talking about this for months. And
Yeah.
so, as we are laying this down at our kiddos' feet, I think having really good awareness and patience for them is going to be important. And recognizing like it took, like, if you reflect on your roller coaster ride of just making this decision, having the conversation, like you had lots of ups and downs. And I think we should expect that from our kids in lots of ways too. And it's going to look different for every kiddo and every piece, but recognizing like we all wrestled with this for a long time before we got here, and our kids are going to wrestle with it too.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. So, practically speaking, we should plan for a number of conversations with them and not necessarily ones that we bring up, but that they do, right? The questions that they ask, or lots of tears at random times, like you probably had,
Mhm.
having a hard time focusing at school, like you probably had a hard time focusing at work, It
Yeah.
makes sense. So, some things, Megan, what are like is some ways that we can be helpful in maintaining some levels of like as much safety feeling, like some steadiness feelings
Mhm.
for them while they're going through all of that?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the reasons I love the story piece of how we tell our kids is because then that becomes a really consistent thing we use when they have lots of questions, right? So
That's
if
good.
if we have created this similar story when they are asking, and they will 100 times, why are you getting a divorce? But you guys get along so well, like you're so nice to each other when we go to soccer games. If you have a consistent story, that is going to create consistency for your kids because they're going to hear the same thing over and over again. So I think having that consistent story is very powerful. Maintaining routines, right? So doing the things you guys do to keep their worlds similar, having open communication, being open to their questions, being willing to answer them. I think those are all really powerful things. Labeling their feelings. I'm all about let help them understand their feelings. So just being able to say to them when they're sitting at the kitchen table staring at their math page for 20 minutes, right? Because it's a couple days after, being able to say, then you're sad and this is hard, right? That gives so much permission. And so I think those are the big ones. What do you think, Katie? What else can we do to help our kids?
I think the labeling the feelings is really helpful. And then I think making sure you're building in more time for connection, even than normal, right?
Hmm.
So if what you normally do is 5 minutes of like the tuck in and sit with you for 5 minutes each, maybe extend it to 8 or 10.
Yeah.
So I think maintaining the routine is really important. So it doesn't need to be we throw away the whole bedtime ritual because that's a bad idea. Like we're
Yeah.
not becoming overly permissive. That's too confusing. But I do think let's build in some more connection time so that they feel really connected with you and safe and warm so that if they need to let some tears out, you're available for that. And then when you see some of those behavior changes, right? Like, when I was going through my divorce, God bless Megan, because I came in and was a mess some days, and she was very patient with me. And so we all need people to be patient with us when we're struggling. That includes our kids, you
Hmm.
know? So I don't know. That, yeah, all those things feel important to me.
Okay. So this is a super hard conversation. Right? It's a hard conversation
Hmm.
to have. It's a hard conversation to be a part of, but we want to end on an encouraging note. So, like, what are some encouraging statements we can give to our parents? Because both of us work in this world so often.
Yeah. I think the number of families that I have seen do this beautifully is wild to me. It's just wild. I'm like a good, I don't know, like probably 8 years in. And at this point, I have worked with like 250 families. And I would say 240 of them have done this conversation exactly like we just talked about. And their kids are thriving. Like when I hear back later, it's like families that had, medium levels of conflict even going into their divorce, they did this conversation well. They created emotional safety. They created we are doing this together. We're going to communicate well for you guys. We're going to take care of you well. We're going to make this really stable for you. And it's like it began a better communication pattern for the long haul. And their relationships each individually with their kids even got better, So I don't think this is
Yeah.
a magic bullet at all, but I do think that it is the beginning stages of how do we get on the same page about what we're communicating to our kids in a way
Yes.
that holds them safe, you know? So, yes, this is hard. It's the hardest way to do it. It would be easier for you to say, "Oh, hey, by the way, here's what's happening. Oh, hey, by the way, your dad left last night. Oh, hey, but because he's a piece of trash." You could do that. It would be much easier for you. But one of the things that I tell parents is like, what we are asking you to do in using this approach is to take the hurt of your patterns and house it with you. You process it and don't pass it down. And it is such a gift that you give your kids and their kids,
Yes.
right? And so I think anybody who's kind of brave enough to approach it this way or try it this way is remarkable. It's just remarkable. It gives me chills. I feel very thankful for people who are willing to consider this.
Yeah, I think that was beautiful, Katie. I think the only thing I will reiterate, because I don't think it's adding in any way, but I'll reiterate is when you are able to hold your stuff and not give it to your kiddos, you are loving them so well and you're protecting them so well. And that is,
You're going to make me cry.
it's hard, y'all. Like it can be very hard. And we can all do hard things.
We can do hard things.
We can do
We can
hard
do
things,
hard
y'all.
things. And that's why we're here.
Because we're here. All right, y'all. Today was long. So
Yeah.
if you made it the whole way, we are so thankful. We hope that this was a wonderful for everyone.
Yeah. And happy Tuesday. We love y'all. Lots of encouragement, and you got this. You can do it. Reach out if you have questions. We'll put the must tell messages in the show notes and send this to anybody who could benefit from it. All the love.
Yes. All right. Bye, guys. And our music is by Stephen Bedall. If you're loving these conversations, we'd be so grateful if you followed the podcast, left a review, or shared this episode with a friend. That's how we grow this little front porch community. And remember, the days are long,
But the years are short. While we often talk about mental health, this should not be used as a substitute for mental health treatment. If you or your child are struggling, please reach out to a local provider.